Father, we thank you for your love for us, and we know that you've called us to love each other. We talk about marriage today, and that has many blessings, but you know there can be hard times and tough times and pain too, and therefore, please be with us in our time together. Help us to learn from each other. You, the great teacher, teach us, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I'd love to show a very quick marriage clip. The woman at the end is my favorite. So let's just take a tiny look at this clip on the secret to a good marriage. Just take a look.
The key to a good marriage is, without a shadow of a doubt, is trust. No trust, no relationship.
Lots of patience.
And good communication and understanding.
Trust. Complete and utter trust.
As well as our time apart. So he goes fishing and I can go and have a coffee and take the kids out. So we have time apart from each other and then time together, because then you appreciate more time together when you're apart.
I think a lot of trust, a lot of communication.
Honesty?
I think the key of the good marriage is love and trust, you know. And if you got love and trust, I think we can have a really good relationship.
Trust and understanding, and building a good relationship, friendship first, and understanding each other, and patience as well.
Married 59 years.
We've been married 59 years.
And what would you say is the key to a good marriage?
Give and take. Give and take. Marry and take, and I give.
Work hard at it.
Yes, yes. And for the man, just give in. Well, you wanted the truth.
If the man is working, it's good for the man to work. Make sure the man is working. And then that's a good marriage. Full-time work.
Oh, I absolutely love that full-time work thing, yeah. Let me tell you what we're going to do in this brief time we have together. All kinds of people here today, all kinds of marriages, and there'll be people who've been through the pain of divorce. There'll be, imagine, some single people as well. There'll be couples who are very much in love at the moment. You resent being here. You could be walking by the side of a river somewhere holding hands. And others for whom, even though you're here together, love may have died in your heart. All kinds of people in all kinds of situations. Somewhere here is a man who's been dragged here by his wife. If we went outside, we'd see the heel marks where you bravely fought the last 10 meters. And you were saying, what does this guy know? What can he... let me tell you why this time will be a little different. I don't want it to be a normal marriage seminar with 10 tips and 10 things you can do and all that. But I do want it to be a sharing of observations. Dan and I have been married a long time. I think we've been married now, in fact, I'm sure we've been married for 53 years. But that's not enough, because that's just one marriage. And marriages are all different. Sure, we've been married long enough to have gone through very, very difficult times. Times when it seemed that love had died. Times when it seemed it was all over, where everything's screwed out. Walk away from this, it's gone. And so we've been through those times. We've been through a lot of pain and lots of joy as well. But that's just one marriage. But an advantage I have had over the last 36 years as first the CEO and now Director of Care for the Family is over that period of 36 years, not only to speak to many people, thousands of people in all cultures all over the world about marriage, but that's not enough either, because that's just speaking to people, but talking to people. After seminars, during the break, in counseling, reading hundreds of letters, listening to thousands of stories, working with experts down the years of all different shades of belief and non-belief. All those years, all those marriages. And very few people have that advantage. So what I want to share with you today, if I may, are simply some observations of that time. Some observations that I can share with you of the 4 dangers that time and time again, and I could have picked 34, but I picked four dangers that can stalk every every marriage. So let me start with this. It's the idea that love is just a feeling. A friend some time ago asked me to speak at a wedding of his daughter. And I was sat there in the church, and it was just lovely. The stained glass windows, the sun was streaming through them. The bride looked incredible. The groom looked about as good as he's ever going to look in life. And I sat there, and they were making the vows to each other, and I listened to those vows. We will love you. I will love you if we are well. And then the vows dared to enter that perfect day with warnings of more difficult times and if we are sick. In other words, in good times, in bad times, the vows dared to suggest that tougher times would be coming down the road. And I wondered if I would have the courage to speak to them about what was on my heart. I decided I would, not that I expected this young couple to believe me or even understand what I was about to talk to them about, but I thought they might put it in the back pocket for later, and it might be useful. And I decided to talk to them about an experience I had had on a beach in West Wales some years ago. I often go to write at a little beach overlooking Carmarthen Bay, a little cottage there, and some years ago I was walking on the beach. It was a beautiful summer's day. Sun was shining. The sea looked as though somebody had scattered 1 million diamonds on its surface. The hills looked glorious, and it was just amazing. And as I made my way back up to the cottage, there was an old fisherman there. And I said to him, it's idyllic, isn't it? I don't know if he was always grumpy or just tired of tourists, but he barked at me, you should see it in January. And when I walked on the beach the next day, it was equally lovely. The sun was shining, the beach looked great, the sea was sparkling, the hills glistened. But I felt the sea and the sun and the sand whisper to me, would you love us in January? January love comes to every relationship. We do not believe that when we begin, but it comes to every relationship. This is not the heat of summer. This is the coldness of winter. This is wondering whether that seed can break through the hardness of the soil and see if there's a possibility of life again. Sometimes I'm on radio, television, or in an interview of a magazine, and people will say, Rob, what do you think the greatest threat to family life is today? I always give the same answer. It is the very pernicious belief that love is basically just a feeling. And when I stop feeling in love, it's time to go. And now listen, I see enough pain in a week to last me a lifetime. Honestly, I could cry most weeks for what comes across my desk. I know there are no easy answers. I understand that. I also understand it's not possible or even desirable to keep every relationship together. I understand that too. Nevertheless, unless we are prepared at some stage of our relationship when it gets tough, to at least go on trying to love when the feeling of love has died for a moment, there's no hope for us. We'll bounce from relationship to relationship. I can remember counseling a young couple. They were in their mid-20s, I suppose. They come into my office. She is cradling a little baby. She's just months old, their first child, little girl. And I say to this young man, why are you leaving your wife and your little girl? He said, because I don't feel in love anymore. When we got married, I was so in love, but I don't feel like that anymore. I said, did nobody ever tell you that the feelings of love go up and down? Did nobody ever tell you that sometimes you have to, at least for a while, nobody wants to do it for the whole of their life through gritted teeth, but at least try for a while to love not just with the heart, but with the will? Did nobody tell you that after the birth of a little one, it can be more difficult? You have this demanding guest that's come into your home. Perhaps the sex is not as good as it was. It's a hard time. Did nobody ever tell you about January love? And he looked at me and he said, no. Nobody told me that. And I look at this little girl cradling in her mother's arms. She's a couple of months old. And the first man in her life is about to walk on her forever. And nobody told him that. And that's what I want to bring to you as an observation. It's true whether you've been married for 6 months or 60 years. You will almost certainly go. I might meet couples sometimes and they say, we've never had a crossword. And I'm like, yeah, perhaps. Nobody sums this up for me like Richard Seltzer. Seltzer was a surgeon. He wrote a book called Mortal Lessons in the Art of Surgery. I know word for word what he put in one of his chapters. He said, I stand by a bed where a young woman lies, her face post-operative, her mouth twisted in palsy, clownish. To remove a tumor in her cheek, I have cut a little nerve. I promise you, he says, with religious fervor, I have followed the curve of her flesh. Nevertheless, to remove the tumor, I cut the nerve. Her mouth is twisted, it will be thus from now on. I watch her and her husband in the evening lamplight of the ward. I ask myself, who are this couple who touch each other so generously, so greedily? The young woman looks up at me. She says, will my mouth always be like this? I nod and I say, yes, I'm sorry. It is because the nerve was cut. And she lowers her head. But he smiles. He says, I like it. It's kind of cute. And suddenly he bends to kiss her crooked mouth. And eyes so close I can see he is altering the shape of his lips to prove the kiss still works. And I ask myself, who is this man who loves like this? In the ancient days, the gods appeared among us. Could he be so? Ladies and gentlemen, that young man wasn't a god. But he was saying something like this to himself. You know, darling, when I married you, you were beautiful and you're a little changed now. And I know that you would like to be as you were last week or yesterday or 5 hours ago. But that's not the case. And I would have loved you to be like that too. But I want you to know now that with every fiber of my body, I will love you. I've already said it's not possible to keep every relationship together or even desirable. But I'm telling you this, there will come a time in almost every marriage where we have to, at least for a while, alter the shape of our lips to prove the kiss still works. And it never will be easy. And it will always fly in the face of the idea that love is just a feeling. But you know, so often we only think of now, this marriage now, what we're going through now. If only we could almost in a drone come above it all and see what's down the road. And perhaps why it's worth fighting, if possible. The effects on us and friends and children and how it will be for us when we are older and all of that. One of the most best-loved books in this, this is a kind of a little book I wrote called The Wisdom House. One of the best-loved books in English literature is Captain Corelli's Mandolin. Pelagia, the young daughter of the doctor, Dr. Inanis, has fallen in love on the island of Cephalonia with the dashing young Italian army captain, Captain Corelli. And they want to marry. And the old doctor takes his daughter aside before the wedding to give her some advice. Now, it gets a bit saucy in the middle, but we've been around a long time, so I expect we'll manage it between us. Here we go. When you fall in love, it is a temporary madness. It erupts like an earthquake, and then it subsides. And when it subsides, you have to make a decision. You have to work out whether your roots are to become so entwined that it is inconceivable that you should ever part. Because this is what love is. Love is not breathlessness. It is not excitement. It is not lying awake at night imagining he is kissing every part of your body. For that is just being in love, which any of us can convince ourselves we are. Love itself is what is left over when being in love has burned away. The danger that can stalk our marriage is the idea that love is just a feeling. And then the second thing I want to share with you is the danger of a creeping separateness. I'll never forget the occasion. I was counseling a couple. They were about to have a divorce, and I said to him, why are you breaking up? And he said to me, you know, it's strange. In many ways, we still really love each other. It's just that down the years, there has been a creeping separateness. And I've never been able to get that phrase out of my mind. A creeping separateness. In this case, no affair, no massive trauma, just over the years, bit by bit, grown apart. Sometimes it happens when the kids come along. We're very busy. We give them ourselves to them. But it's not wise to give ourselves totally to the kids, because when they're gone, we suddenly look at each other and say, well, who are you? And they're just grown apart. And I think Dan and I knew that. At a stage in our marriage, I was in the law practice. I was also helping run a massive church. I was speaking all over the place, and time was pressurized. Isn't time a fascinating thing? Don't you find time fascinating? You can't save it, you can't buy it, you can't mortgage it. People say to me, I saved an hour. I say, oh, really? Where did you put it? You can save money, you can put money under the bed and come back to it, but you can only spend time. And everybody wants more time. The only problem is everybody has all the time there is in the world. Tonight, somewhere in a penthouse in Manhattan, a billionaire will die, surrounded by doctors, lawyers, consultants, and at exactly the same time, a beggar will die on the streets of Calcutta alone, his sores licked by dogs. Those men only had two things the same all their lives. At 1 second past midnight, a bag of 24 hours was delivered to each man's bed, and 24 hours later, each man's bag was empty. No amount of money, power, prestige could buy one more minute. And the decisions we make with our time are fascinating, and I made some bad ones. I wrote about it in a book I called The 60-Minute Father. I spoke about it 2 days ago at the parenting seminar. And I remember Dan saying to me one day, darling, I don't think we're going to make it. And we just grown apart. It wasn't that we weren't doing good things, or I wasn't doing good things. I was. But you know what? The problem is this. Sometimes those of us who live life at 100 miles an hour do pretty well. But those closest to us sometimes pick up the cost. And I remember Dan saying to me, you know what, Rob, it's all very well you out there saving the world, but you have got a family as well. Sometimes people used to say to me, but Rob, you have to put Jesus in front of you. You have to put the church in front of your family. And I say, you know what? When I realized where I was going wrong, my family are part of the church. You can't sometimes do it all. You can't say yes to everybody. You know, sometimes I think perhaps we're like a child in a playground with a bag of sweets. We say, if I say yes to everything you ask me to do, would you be my friend? Would you love me? Most of us are a lot more insecure than we let on. Rob, would you do this? Would you do that? Would you speak you? Can you? Yes to you all, and no to those for whom I had primary responsibility. And we were just growing apart. And I remember when I realized it was really serious, and if I didn't do something about it, the things I valued most would slip through my fingers. And I remember cancelling engagement after engagement. And I remember Dan and I sitting in front of a fire on winter's evenings and just trying to learn to talk again. Because communication's at the heart of it. Everybody knows we're meant to communicate in marriage, but it's not easy. And certainly when you've not done it for many years, it's almost like learn to play the piano again. You sit down and you say, well, the guy said we should communicate. Well, let's start. Well, should we have the television off or just turn it down? Well, we'll just turn it down for now. Let's see how we do. Well, you go first. No, you go first. I remember talking to Dan and saying, well, what do you want to talk about? She said, I want to talk about your mother. I said, well, what do you mean you're talking about my mother? Well, she said, I think I hate your mother. I said, what do you mean you hate my mother? Well, I think I do. And do you know what it was? When I got married, I forgot what the Bible said about leaving and cleaving. And I tried to keep two women going. And I would call on my mother every day, and my mother this, and my mother that. And you can't do it. It's crazy. And when I put my mother and Diane in their right positions, they got on a lot better. I can't say like a house on fire, but a lot better. And actually, they were fine. But I remember those long winter evenings just talking. Where did we go wrong? And how did it happen? And could we possibly rebuild some of this again? And then I think I'd forgotten to express appreciation to Di. Now, I'm talking from my perspective as a husband, but you must interpret this because these things can be the other way around. It's not all the guys. It can be the other way around. And I think I'd forgotten to appreciate that. I remember Diane saying to Diane, in the early years of our marriage, if you could change anything about me, what would it be? I'd rather hope she would have to think about it for a while, to be honest. But she didn't even hesitate. She said, you know what? You know when you shave, you leave stubble all around the sink. And you just throw the towel in a wet bath and you get toothpaste halfway up the wall. I don't know how you do it, but you do that. And I said, is that it? She said, that will do for starters. And I can remember saying, I haven't been married long. Why is this such a big deal? Because do you know what, Rob? I work outside the home as well, but right now I spend a lot of time kind of cleaning and tidying the place. I know you share it and so forth, but sometimes when I do that and you come along and treat it as though Hurricane Flora has just visited, you seem to say to me, what I do doesn't matter. And what you seem to say to me is, who I am doesn't matter. And I realize, not just in that silly example, but in lots of ways, I'd just forgotten to not only appreciate Di, but to express it, to actually say it. Some years ago, Dan and I were taken by a guide into the Sinai desert. And we were showed a plant that had learned to die when a drought came, the rains didn't come. And the guide said, this plant doesn't die all in one go, it dies in sections. So it won't all die, half of it will die, and the other half will wait for the rain. And then a half of that, so you've now got a quarter of the plant, and then an eighth. And he said, finally, there's just one strand hanging on, waiting for the rain to come. And he said, when the water hits the bud at the end of the stem, it explodes seeds of life hundreds of feet into the desert. Some of us in this room, some men and women, we feel like that, perhaps. We are almost dying for lack of appreciation. We're dying for somebody to say to us, thank you, and you look nice in that. And did I ever tell you that I really... You know, the Bible talks about love. It's a well-known chapter. You don't even read it to me. But one of the things it talks about is love is kind. Kind. And I sometimes think in our relationships, we've forgotten to be kind. Just kind. That sense of appreciation. Do you know, I was in Canada running a seminar some years ago now, a big 2,000-seater auditorium. And as I walk in, the people running the event said to me, there are a couple in the front row, and they're about to have a divorce. People tell me they now hate each other. We're very surprised they've come to the event. Certainly surprised they've sat in the front row. And this couple just looked as though they hated each other. Frankly, they looked as though they hated me. They were loose chairs like this, and they put them as far apart from each other as possible. I felt practically air conditioning coming off this couple towards me. Seminar began at 7:30, finished at 10 o'clock. When people went out in the break to get a coffee, this couple didn't go out. They just sat there immobile. They didn't speak. They just sat there. And at 9:45, he reached out and took her hand. I saw her. His hand, he reached across her lap and he took her hand, and then she pulled her hand away. And then I watched as she put her hand back and his hand over her hand. I could hardly finish the seminar. I'm watching those hands. And somebody said to me at the end, are you about to tell us that a touch saved their marriage? And I say, well, I don't know. But I do know this. I've seen many marriages go down in a spiral over the years. Sometimes not big stuff, not abuse, not the affair, not massive financial trauma. They just go down 1,000 tiny hurts that never got resolved. And you know, sometimes the tiniest thing can kick the bottom of that spiral and get it going up again. The tiniest thing. You might have come even to this little seminar because your husband, your wife asked you to, and that's just a little thing. Oh, well, if you really want to, I'll come with you. And it's a small thing, isn't it? But sometimes the tiniest thing can make a difference. And when it does, everything can change. I once had a letter, and it went like this. John and I were so in love when we first got married. I used to love talking to him, and he would pour out his heart to me. And then he got really busy at work. He works very long hours, but we need the money. He comes home late at night. I can hear his feet dragging as he approaches the porch. I am very lonely right now. There aren't any people around that I can talk to very, very easily. When we go to bed, he expects me to have sex, and I tell you, I can't do it. I feel used. I feel like a prostitute for having sex with my own husband. That can't be right, can it? She said. And she said, I'm probably a lousy mother and a lousy wife. And then she said this, probably God doesn't love me either. Was he a bad man? No, he wasn't. He was working hard and trying hard and put bread on the table and all that. But somehow this woman, and it could have easily been the other way around, this woman felt almost nothing, unloved, untouched by appreciation or kindness. And it can happen very, very easily. Let me talk to you a little bit, if I may, about conflict. And this is a danger. Obviously, this goes after lots of marriages. You know, the Bible says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. That was the old translation that I used to know. A more modern one is, resolve the flak before you hit the sack. Dan said to me once, why don't we just stay up and fight? And I'll be honest with you, I do try to, and if she were here now, I'd say, we've done enough of these together all over the world. I don't sit behind her back. I am better at it than she is. She's not that gracious in the early stages. We're lying in bed, we've had a row, we're lying back to back, huffing and puffing and pulling the sheets either way. And I'll after a while, I'll just get either bored or whatever, and I'll go for reconciliation. And I'll try and touch her leg with my big toe. Diane withdraws the whole leg. And eventually we'll normally get round to it, but it's not easy. It's not easy. Frankly, we row a lot less these days. I don't know, it's because you get old, you're just too tired. But we row a lot less these days. But you have to somehow deal with conflict. I remember when I was a lawyer, a guy came into my office. He was a bus conductor. And he said to me, I want a divorce. And I said, why do you want a divorce? And he said to me, I promise you it's true. He said, because I came off night shift, I came home, my wife was out, and she had left for my meal an unopened tin of pie filling. I said, what? He said she'd left an unopened tin of pie filling. To be honest, I think what really annoyed him was he couldn't find the tin opener. And I think if he could have found the tin opener, it'd probably been okay. And I said, you're not leaving your wife for a tin of pie. And of course he wasn't. He was leaving his wife because an unopened tin of pie filling for his main meal was the 100th unresolved conflict. Here's a fascinating thing. Don't push me on it. Don't push me on it. But there's some fascinating research beginning to emerge that couples who have a couple of rows yell at each other a bit more actually can do a bit better than those who just all keep it all in. It is Very, very interesting. And the problem with some couples is not they row too much, they don't row enough. There's rather that more of that creeping separateness. So conflict is going to be with us for all reasons, with different personalities. And you know, when we get married, we tend to change. We look at our partner after a few years quite differently. What we used to call strong, we now call stubborn. What we used to find funny is now just silly. What was adventurous is now irresponsible. Somebody once said that women marry men with the silly idea they'll be able to change them. And men marry women with the foolish notion that they'll be the same forever. We're different. And conflict will come. And not only are we different, we all come into our marriages with different baggage. Do you know, have you ever gone to a young couple, they're about to get married, and they got loads of wedding presents? And I can remember going to a house once, and the front room was full of wedding presents, like about 5 toasters, and I don't know what else. And oh, what's that big brown box, almost like a pirate's treasure chest, in the corner? Oh. This couple did not intend to bring that into their marriage, but it would not be left behind. It contains the experiences, the values, the memories they had as children. It contains the way that their own parents used to talk to each other, and the box would not be left behind. It was bumped over the threshold of their new home, unknown to them. And we all carry it with us, that baggage. And the box was opened one night, Tuesday at 7 o'clock. He came home late. She'd been at work all day, but that night she'd done the cooking. And he said to her, "I'll have my meal in the television watching the game." The lasagna missed him because he ducked. But he thought, what did I say? They had done been married for a couple of months. What did I say? How could he know? All the memories she had of her father, who always had his meal in front of the television watching the game, who treated her mother like a skivvy, and she was terrified it would ever happen in her own marriage. How could he know that the boxes would be opened that night? We all carry that stuff. And you know, conflict in itself is not a bad thing, but there are basic rules. You mustn't say things like, "you always," because we don't normally always, or attack the person. You'll get away with, "How come you missed Simon's dental appointment again?" But you won't get away with, "You were such a lousy father." Because when you do that, you touch somebody's soul, practically. You touch their person. And you know, in conflict, some of us are pretty good with words. I'm pretty good with words. I'm pretty good with words. And therefore, certainly in the early years of our marriage, not so much now, to be honest, because Dan seems to have caught up pretty fast. But in the early, I could win arguments pretty easily, So you're in the kitchen, you have a fight, and you win the argument, and you stalk out, and your rhetoric has brought you out on top again, and you've won. If only you could go back. If only you could be a fly on the wall and see what you'd left behind. Somebody who had so much to say, but weren't quite as articulate as you. And don't kid yourself for a moment that will never come out. As surely as night follows day, it will come out. And you know, sometimes we have to lose some arguments. You know the funny thing about conflict and rows? I'm not talking about the massive stuff, but the everyday stuff that annoys us. And the funny thing about rows is, if you learn to resolve them or even let them go, a couple of days you can't remember what it was about. But if you let them go, another thing they've done, another thing they've done, it so often builds up. The way we deal with conflict, we all have to face it. As I come to an end, I want to talk to you briefly about the affair. And guys, I don't offend any of you. As far as I know none of you. I can't offend you. But I've been doing this long enough to know there will be men and women in this auditorium now in an affair or on the edge of an affair. None of this is easy. It could happen to any one of us tomorrow. I understand that. It was spring, at the time when kings go to war. And David was on the rooftop of his palace, and he saw a beautiful woman bathing. And he said, "What's her name?" And they said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, one of his most loyal soldiers?" And David sent for her, and she came to him. A little while later, he got a note saying, I'm pregnant. The trauma that came out of that experience was unbelievable. Death of a child, a man murdered, almost lost the kingdom. When did David fall into that affair? Did he fall when he got Uriah drunk, brought him back from the battle and tried to get him to go home and sleep with his own wife? And Uriah said, no, not while the boys are out in the battlefield. No, I'll sleep here on the stone step. I think Uriah knew. That's the truth of it. But did the affair really begin when he got Uriah murdered? Did it begin when he climbed into bed with Bathsheba? No. The affair began in the 10 seconds after David saw this incredibly beautiful woman. He just kept on looking and said, "What's her name?" And in those 10 seconds, it would have been relatively easy to walk away. Just turn around and gone, but the battle against the office affair is not won at the bedroom door of the Hilton. It's won in the office party when someone smiles at you across a room and you know there's a bit of electricity going on, and you have 10 seconds to decide whether you're going to walk those 40 feet or keep talking to the boring lawyer next to you. 10 seconds. I spoke to a young man not long ago. He told me of his experience. He said, I went to a black tie dinner, and he said, my wife wasn't with me, and as we're driving home, because the boys had gone clubbing, I didn't want to go clubbing. I was just going home to my wife's about 11 o'clock at night, and he said, I was driving one of those dual carriageways where there's a set of lights, and then another one, and I pull up the first set of lights, and I look left, and there's a very attractive woman driving the car, a young woman next to me, and we smile at each other. And at the next night, like we smiled at each other again. And at the next, and at the next, and at the next, I pressed a button on the electric window, and she put her window down. And I said, "What's your number?" And I pumped it in, and she said it, and over the next couple of miles, we chatted to each other. She said, as I was going to my office, into my home, I got a text from her saying, "Are you married?" And he said, I said, "Yes." He said, we never met. But he said, a couple of nights afterwards, I went out and I left my mobile phone behind. And I came back and my wife was holding it in her hand. And she was weeping in the kitchen. He said, not only did I not have sex with her, I didn't touch her. We never met. And honestly, Rob, he said, it almost cost me our marriage. Almost cost me our marriage. Now, when did that all happen? His hand hovered above that electric button, didn't it? And it would have been so easy in those 10 seconds just to stick his foot on the gas and move down the road. But he didn't. He decided to just press that electric button down. And so it began. A guy walked into my office, my home actually, he came to my study. He was about to leave his wife and 3 small children for the woman he was having an affair with in the office, Christian guy. And he said to me, look, he said, I haven't got a lot of time. He was quite arrogant, to be honest. He said, I haven't got a lot of time. And he said, my friends and my wife said I should come and see you. But he was quite arrogant. And I said, well, can you spare me 2 minutes? I see a lot of affairs in my work. Can you spare me 2 minutes? He said, sure, I can spare you 2 minutes. I said, well, take a seat. I said, I can't promise you how this will turn out, But let me tell you how I think it may well turn out. If this is the ordinary life, cleaning out the garage on a Saturday, looking for lost hamsters, paying electricity bills, sticking a new washer on the leaking tap, it's just boring. And the problem with the ordinary life is it is incredibly boring sometimes. And what the affair does, it allows you to flip off this unbelievably boring life in this incredibly exciting affair. I sat down with a guy not long ago, quite a famous guy actually, in the middle of an affair, and he said to me, "Rob, the sex is fantastic. It's like talking to a child." I said, "There's never been an affair in the world where the sex wasn't fantastic." But I said, what will happen normally after a couple of years is you will click into another ordinary life again. And you will find that bank managers' letters invade this love nest. And the washers break on this tap and it needs fixing. And hamsters, if you've got kids with you, will still hide behind the sink. And all the ordinary things will invade this new home. And you'll be in an ordinary life again. And then I said an incredible thing may happen. And listen, if you're writing this now, I don't want to offend you. But I said, this is what may happen. You may wonder what your kids look like first thing in the morning. I know you'll still see them weekends and Christmas, but you'll wonder what they look like first thing. And then an unbelievable thing may happen. It's not at all impossible. You'll look back on your wife and things that drive you crazy now will not seem such a big deal then. And you'll say, I wonder why her dress size was so much more important than the woman she was. She was always there for me. And it's not impossible that the one you're lying next to will not seem quite as attractive then. I'm not saying that it will happen. It doesn't happen every time. But I've seen it time and time and time again. Time and time again. And when you're talking to someone at the beginning or in the middle of an affair, it's almost impossible to deal with it. They don't want to listen. Nobody wants to listen because it's all so wonderful. Of course it is. It's as if when you walk into the shop, the price ticket says free. And it is free. Just a little. People say, well, you're late home tonight. Oh, I was just working with the kids at the youth club, just practicing another song with the worship band. I was just busy in the office. It's just, and then as you go through the various stages of the affair, it's as if somebody at the back of the store is changing the price on the ticket. And now it demands a little more deceit and a bit more deceit. And now you're deceiving your friends. And now you're deceiving. And when someone says, is there anything going on between you? And you say, oh, no. And the price is going up. And one day you walk into the store and the price ticket says everything. And I've been doing this for 36 years. And I can tell you, even if it's not everything, it's very often a lot. Sometimes home. Sometimes ministry, kids, health, sometimes a lot. And you say, no, I didn't sign up for that. And, oh, did you not know that it would demand everything? And you know what I think is both sad and wearying? If it all turned out hunky-dory most of the time, well, even then, wrong, but so often it doesn't. It's just the same old. And the price is so very high. The dangers that can stalk any marriage. A woman wrote to me after one of our very first marriage seminars, going back 35 years. It's a Saturday. She wrote to me and said, this seminar was our last hope. If this didn't work, we were forgetting it. She and my husband, we've been married 14 years. My husband had an affair. I couldn't forgive him no matter how sorry he said he was. But then I listened to you talking about God's forgiveness, and I thought, well, if possible, I want my kids to have a mum and dad, if possible. And I decided I would try to forgive him. She said we held hands together that day. We cried together. We even laughed a little. We're going to try again. And then she put a PS. Here's the next 14 years. Was that forgiveness easy for that woman? No, it was not. Did that forgiveness mean she could ever forget? No. But you know what forgiveness did for that woman? It gave her a chance. And gave them a chance to see if it was possible. The key of forgiveness allowed them at least to try to begin again. I remember running, it's not easy though, I remember running a seminar in the Midlands. I remember it now, a Saturday, big university auditorium. And a young couple waited to speak to me, and they waited until the auditorium was empty, and then they came forward, and he told me their story. He said, we've been married for a couple of years now, and I had an affair, just a one-night stand. He said, just a one-night stand. And he said, I was so sorry. And he said, I said to my wife, darling, I want to do something to show you how sorry I am. And he said, I took my wedding ring off, and I gave it to her. And I said, darling, don't put that ring back on my finger till you can trust me again. And then he said, look, Rob, last week she put the ring back on my finger, and his head was high and he was smiling. But I look at her, and her head is bowed. And I say to him, I don't want to offend you, and I may be wrong. But I think when she put that ring on your finger, she wasn't saying, I trust you again. She was saying, with all my heart, I want to trust you again. And this is going to take time. Time. Catherine Hill, as I bring this to a close, tells a lovely story, our UK director. She was in a taxi in London, and the cabbie told her this story. He said, my wife has a muscle wasting disease, and we tried everything. We tried yoga, he said. We tried Pilates. We tried 1,001 things, and none of it worked. And then a leaflet came through our door for ballroom dancing. And he said, we tried ballroom dancing together. And she can do it. It's wonderful. And he said, we've been doing it now for about a year. And he said, the other day, one evening, he said, we were just finished having our meal together. And I said to her, darling, I'm puzzled. None of the stuff we tried worked, not the Pilates or the yoga or this or that. No. Why do you think the ballroom dancing works? She said, don't you know? He said, no. It's because you're holding me. It's because you're holding me. And that's what we're meant to do to each other if we can. It's not always possible, if we can. It's a tough life out there, hard bringing up kids. Hard, if we can, to support each other. Two are better than one, if we can. It's been lovely to talk to you. This is the last chance I get to say this to you, and I don't want to weary you. But Awaken have given me the opportunity to ask you, would you like to become a partner with Care for the Family? I spend my life doing this stuff, and if you want to, you will make a difference to many marriages. You were given this form. Fill it in now if you want to, small or great. If you haven't got all your bank details, don't worry. Sign it. Bring it over here afterwards. If you're an existing partner, use the purple form. Could be a couple of pounds a month, whatever you wanted, just a little. Fill it and bring it over there. And then this is what I want to give you. Our story box, this is for your attic. Put all your memories in here. It'll be a time capsule. There's a link to about 20 of our videos. There's a little thing on your dreams, your ambitions, your hopes and fears as a family. Have that. Here's my book. Look, when I was 12 years old, what did it teach me in Sunday school? If you're a failure, I talked yesterday about my school teacher saying he's making no use of what little ability he had. And I talk a little bit about that in here. Here's my book on marriage, Loving Against the Odds. What's the time? Have I got time? Yes, I think I have. Hang on. Here we go. Let me read you this little poem as we go. Dan, we went through a real tough period of illness just after the birth of Lloyd. It was a real dark time. I wrote about it in the new book that's coming out. You've got a leaflet of it called A Knock at the Door, Our 45 Years with a Homeless Guy. It comes out in November, and I wrote about this illness in that time. It was a dark time. It went on for a long time. And shortly after that, I was running a marriage seminar, and Diane was there. And I wrote to this little poem. It's not the greatest poem you've ever heard, but I have loved you. Loved you when we held hands feverishly in the back of the Gaumont Cinema in Queen Street. And I have loved you when we were married, loved you as we scoured junk shops, furnishing our first flat and picking up fantastic bargains and wardrobes with woodworm in them. We built a home, and I loved you when she was born, and suddenly we were 3. And then he came, and throughout all the darkness and the joy, I have loved you. And I have loved you in the night when we cried together, and the tunnel seemed so very long and so very black. And you loved me with all my inconsistency and hypocrisy. When all the great hopes came so often to so little, went on loving. And we loved each other, you and I. Love when at times it seemed that love had died, and all there was just the hope that it would grow again, come fighting, kicking through the frost. And it did. Came stronger, purer, finer, truer. And today, on this Saturday, I can say, I have loved you. Love to give you a copy of that. It has the stuff I've talked about on the affair and sex in it, and I don't know what else. A copy of Catherine Hill's Left to Their Own Devices book for bringing up kids and screen time. And this is the book that changed my life. Shortly after that, period with Diane, apart from the Bible, this is the book that changed my life. Lewis Smedes wrote it, but it went out of print, and the publishers brought it out with Rob Parsons, the book that changed my life. So I'd love to give you a copy of that. And then if you weren't here yesterday, you will have not heard this. When my son Lloyd, who was my testing one, Katie was compliant. Lloyd came into the world smoking a cigar. He was my testing one. He said to me when he was 17, Dad, I'd like to write a book with you. I said, Lloyd, you've never read a book. He said, well, I want to write a book. I said, what do you want to write a book on? He said, I want to write a book on how you could be a better father. So we did. We called it What Every Kid Wished Their Parents Knew, and vice versa. And I've now got 5 grandchildren. It's great being a grandparent. Little Evie drives him crazy. I took her aside and said, Evie, I'm so grateful to you. Honestly, it's amazing. Do you know why grandparents and grandkids get along so well? They've got a common enemy. And now I've got 5, and this is, we brought out the book again, but we asked the grandkids to write reports on their parents, see what they were like. And Evie writes things about Lloyd like this: mobile use poor, often on it on the toilet, pocket money could do better, personality, room for improvement, very grumpy. So guys, if you are able to help us, even just a small amount every month, fill it in. I'll be at there afterwards. I'd love to sign a copy of one of these to you personally, to mark the day you became a partner. Take that, the Lloyd book, that one, whatever you could, take the Youth and Done Devices, Love Against the Odds, Sunday School book, and the story box as my thank you to you, and give them away, use them. But above all, thank you for coming today. I hope some of us have helped you. Let me just pray very briefly. We need you, Lord. It's too hard a life. It's hard to love sometimes, and we desperately need you, the God of love. And Lord, when your word says, that lovely poem about love in 1 Corinthians, love never fails. Well, we know sometimes our love fails, but love never fails. Your love is there. Your love is underneath to help see us through. So I pray for any couple here now going through a really hard time, that you'll be merciful to them and help them. For some of us who feel unappreciated, that we might know that again. For some who have lost hope. And for those going through really great times right now, may they enjoy them and be blessed and build walls around their relationship in the good times. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for coming. If you want to become a partner, come on over there.